The Trap Set will always be available for free, but we rely on donations from our listeners. Please visit our website at thetrapset.net and click Donate. Subscribe to our show on iTunes, and if you enjoy what you hear, give us a review.
This episode of The Trap Set is brought to you in part by Colectivo Coffee, handmade coffee since 1993. Check them out online at colectivo.com. This is Joe Wong. Welcome to The Trap Set, where each week we explore the lives of drummers. I want to play something for you. You're hearing Apple Cider Vinegar by my guest, Danny Frankel, along with Nels Klein and Larry Goldings. Over the past 3 decades, Danny has been in great demand as a session drummer for a diverse array of artists including Lou Reed, Fiona Apple, Katie Lang, and Bebel Gilberto. His unique style draws equally from his backgrounds in art rock and world percussion, and he has a dynamic range and musical sensitivity that comes partly from the tutelage of jazz great Paul Motian. Despite being blessed with a signature style, Danny is incredibly adaptable. Danny began his career as the drummer for DC band Urban Verbs. Although they never achieved mainstream success, the band released 2 albums for Warner Brothers and earned the respect of contemporaries like Per Ubu, the B-52s, and Brian Eno. Urban Verbs dissolved in 1981, and Danny soon made his way to Los Angeles. I recorded this interview several months ago, and since then, Danny and I have become friends. We live in the same neighborhood of Los Angeles, and often we meet up for hikes in Griffith Park. Not only is he an expert hiker, Danny is known and loved by almost everyone we encounter on the trail. He exhibits an exuberance and a genuine interest in everyone, which, when combined with his prodigious musical abilities, explains why he remains in demand, even after 30 years in the business. And now our interview with Danny Frankel.
I hail from planet Earth in a city that some people call the Mistake on the Lake, which is Cleveland, Ohio, which I particularly like a lot. And it was when I moved away from Cleveland, that's when I found out about all these like really interesting people and things that were from Cleveland.
Like Per Ubu and stuff.
Like Per Ubu, yeah. I met them later at CBGB's. And then American Splendor, that comic book about life in Cleveland.
Yeah, Harvey Pekar.
Harvey Pekar, yeah.
Tell me about what your family did. What did your dad do?
My dad... both my parents are social workers. He also took a lot of photographs and like these great like natural black and white photographs like of kids playing around in the street, you know, just really cool stuff. Store windows like with a big eye on the window, like just really trippy, great, thoughtful things. And then around 5 years ago, the Smithsonian Museum, they put out a book of all this stuff. And really cool, yeah. And he and my mom wrote books together in that quote unquote like how-to field. Little, you know, kind of silly, but yeah. One was called Creating from Scrap, and it was about like things that you can do and use with stuff that you would maybe normally throw out, like a old can. You make a lantern out of it by poking holes in it and putting a candle inside, you know.
What was your household like when you were growing up? Did they foster creativity?
Definitely, yeah, they were really supportive of that. I thought it was so great. Sometimes they would say things that were kind of like jarring. I don't know, maybe it's because they're Scorpios. I don't know.
What do you mean jarring?
I don't know. They would be like very direct when they'd be talking to you. Sometimes it'd be a little bit harsh for someone who takes everything personally or something.
Like you? Are you really sensitive?
I can be, and you know, in life you learn how to deal with it. Yeah, sometimes I feel like no one changes. You just kind of like learn how to deal with stuff, you know. So if that means like maybe like if someone is talking to you, they say something kind of that makes you feel like heavied out, you just cut it in half, or you have to tell yourself, you know, this isn't important. Or sometimes, you know, you can learn from it. You know, it's just like the delivery of it.
How did you first get into music?
Well, like a lot of people say with them, and I think it's with me too, like the Beatles, you know, when they were on Ed Sullivan. And I was kind of like a physical person. I was like really nutty. I'd always be running around with my friends, and there'd be a lot of mischievous stuff, some trouble, but not that weird. And so the drums really, I really related to that, the physical approach and just making noise. And
was that your first instrument, or did you learn something else first? Drums were first.
Drums first, and then my father once came back home from work, and he said, you know, I was talking to some friends of mine at work, you know, and they say if you want to start to play drums, you have to learn bongos first. And I thought that was the greatest, and I bought bongos then, and I've just been like really obsessed with it.
Did you have a plan for your life before you started playing drums?
There wasn't a plan, but I was just so focused and into doing the drums. I just felt like that was like the only thing I wanted to do. Like my wife Mimi, she likes to do like millions of different things. That's like the opposite side of the same coin. For me, it's just that thing. So when it's great, it's like really good, and when things aren't happening, you know, I really need to do other stuff, or else I'm gonna go nuts or something.
Tell me about the Urban Verbs. How did that band get started? Were you in high school at the time?
It was a little after high school, and a good friend of mine, John, he was a surfer back then. He'd always get into like
a surfer in D.C.
Yeah, you know, we'd surf like in Ocean City, Maryland.
Okay.
I was into Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. Yeah, it was great. Yeah, it wasn't quite like the waves here, but yeah, but great though, you know. And he was like always in the. He was kind of aggressive, like into the like in crowd. He'd always find his way into the epicenter of where it was at. You know, so he did that with the surfers, and then so it's music too. You know, he met a lot of great people, and then there's this one band. Yeah, the Urban Verbs, and they needed drums, you know, so I went there and just started playing with them, and that it worked out. The singer, Roddy France, I saw him like a few years before I met him. He was on a bus, you know, and going up 16th Street, and he looked like this weird, like David Bowie kind of guy, you know, and I just remembered him, and then I met him, you know, 2 years later, you know, then, and so we practiced a lot in this funky building in D.C. that was kind of like the Times Square, like in the 70s era, but you know, but in D.C. just really weird. And then a lot of
like lots of hookers and stuff around,
yeah,
and drugs,
and the drugs and the seedy action. A lot of people, they'll kick the shit out of you if you have eye contact with them, and then a lot of writings on the walls, like Shaw is U.S. puppet, down with the Shaw, and a lot of political action there, you know. It was a good time. I felt like we were learning like a whole new language with the Urban Verbs. It wasn't just like straight rock with the hard backbeat and all this. The kind of stuff that kind of made me think of like Captain Beefheart, you know, but maybe more symmetrical, maybe.
This episode of The Trap Set is brought to you in part by that great Gretsch sound. USA Custom, Brooklyn, and Broadcaster Series drums, all proudly handcrafted in Ridgeland, South Carolina. For over 130 years, that great Gretsch sound has endured. See everything Gretsch has to offer at GretschDrums.com. You're in your, early 20s when you're doing Urban Verbs?
Mid-20s, yeah.
Had you gone
exactly.
to college?
I went to college A little bit. Montgomery College in Rockville and Tacoma Park, and studied not music, psychology, creative writing, kind of around stuff all around me.
Yeah, right.
And then I went to school 1 year in Rhode Island. Oh, but when I was in Rhode Island during that year, I noticed the Keith Jarrett American Quartet, that band with Dewey Redman, Charlie, Paul, they were playing at Brown University in Providence. And so I thought, I really want to see this because I was always a fan of Paul Motian.
You had a relationship with Paul Motian, right?
Yeah, that's
he kind of mentored you.
Yeah, so I went to that concert, and then I talked to him, and he goes, whenever you're in New York, just look me up. I'm in the book. God, that's so old school. I'm in the book, the telephone book. And so for 2 years, on and off, I was his only student. I'd go to his apartment on Central Park West in like 105th. It was just
He had a killer apartment on Central Park West?
Yeah, back then I think he probably only paid like $350 or something. It was a long time ago. We opened up the front door, and on the wall was just one of two of those masks, from the theater. Like, there's tragedy and
comedy.
Comedy, yeah. So the only one was tragedy. I always remember that. But he'd say the coolest things.
Was that his vibe? He was a tragic kind of guy?
Well, poetic
Okay.
and deep and intense. Man, yeah, he would say, when you're playing, think of colors like orange and red. And
how would you respond to that as a kid? I mean, what did that mean to you?
A lot of I would look at him and go, oh yeah, but later
on.
Did
you feel it, or is it something that came to fruition like later on in your life?
Exactly. There's a lot of things that came to me like much later on. I played, and then he said, just play some stuff, and then after like a minute or so, he stopped me and he goes, okay, here are your two problems. You accent everything on the second beat, and 2, you're paranoid.
Interesting.
Really
Were
great.
you paranoid?
Oh, yeah. And he was very, very perceptive, really.
So Urban Verbs, that was your first kind of real band that you were in?
Oh, yeah.
And then Eno saw you guys play in New York, right?
Yeah, he did. And then he organized another gig for us at CBGB's, and they recorded the gig, and he was concentrating on 2 songs, and so they recorded the gig, and they kept the drums and bass, and they went in the studio with all the other people, and this is kind of great, he had the singer speak the words instead of singing it. That's kind of different. I like that. And then another one, I think he had more feedback or something. And he was really great.
Were you a fan of his? Were you a fan of Roxy Music or solo albums?
Definitely. Yeah. What is it? Out of the Blue? Is that one of the songs? And then they're really cool. And we had an appointment, to hang out with Eno in his apartment. And it was like super 80s. He had bottles of Perrier water and a bowl of grapes. I mean, it's so 80s. He was a really nice guy. And he was a really nice guy. Those songs, they never turned up on an album. You can see them on YouTube, but it helped us get a great record deal with Warner Brothers and back in the time. And we were all in Washington, D.C. at the time. We didn't need to go to any stinking New York or L.A. or Nashville.
How did you go from being a band guy to being a work for hire guy, like a hired gun?
I was a little bit of the hired gun thing back in DC because I was so interested in everything and that was one great thing. And then I was playing in different bands and sometimes different recording things. But what was it? I don't know. I think it's just being interested in a lot of things and digging drums and percussion and the hybrid of the two. And
when did you hook up with Lou Reed?
In '93. My good friend who I've known since the first week we moved here, Victoria Williams, she's from Shreveport, Louisiana. She's been here for a long time. She put out these great records with great people. I was lucky enough to play on a lot of them, but Brian Blade has played on them, and Greg Cohen. She was diagnosed with MS, and back then, that MTV show 120 Minutes, they said they wanted to have this thing for her where different great musicians play her songs, and like Lou Reed and Pearl Jam and the Jayhawks and a lot of great people. So then, and she wanted to know if I wanted to go there to fly to New York. It didn't pay anything, but I said fine, that'd be great. It seems really meaningful. So I went there. My hotel, they gave me the key to the hotel room at the registration desk, and the number was 1717. So I thought, this is great. Like, something good is going to happen. So then I went to the studio. A lot of people were practicing her songs. It was pretty loose, Then Lou was playing, so I just picked up a tambourine and was playing like kind of shyly, And Vic was next to me. She was like drumming on her legs. It was really funny. It was like really unpretentious, and he kind of invites that, Lou. He has like a wide range of different moods and stuff, but there's a thing about him that could be like a kind of cool guy, like a big brother, So I ended up playing these songs with her and him, and then for like around 2 years after that, the management would call me up and say, are you available to play on Letterman, Jay Leno, to do this recording, September Songs in New York, then to do the video of it in Toronto, and with that band. Actually, I guess they were between drummers or something. It was really, really great. And
what were your interactions with him like?
This comes to mind. Like 4 of us were sitting in a room, and we're talking about some bar that we heard of in Toronto, and how it was kind of a cool bar. And he said, yeah, it's really great when you go to a bar where no one gives you any shit. And he said it with a lot of force. I don't know, I just remember that. And we were hanging out in the airport once, and we were looking through magazines, him, me, and Greg Cohen, the great bass player. It was either Greg or Rob Wasserman, the 2 bass players, either or. And then he picked up a magazine, and those funny postcard size like subscription things are inside the cards that were in the magazine, and he was dramatically like ripping them out and throwing them on the floor. He's kind of like a dramatic kind of guy.
But like as a member of the band, was he very specific in what he wanted?
Sometimes
would he talk to you a lot, or just expect you to know what he wanted?
He would say things from time to time, and they were really great. Like at the end of September Song, I started going off, like playing more fills, and it was kind of like reminiscent of some of those Otis Redding songs, where was it Al Jackson? Or just starting to like these build-ups, and he said to me, when you do that, like, don't go back, just keep on making it crazier, until we end the song. Something like that was really cool.
September Song. September Song. Precious days.
Is there a time when you felt like you came into your own as a drummer, or you had your own sound or your own kind of fingerprint that would be identifiable on anything you played on?
There was a time in the 90s, I really feel like that I was doing a lot of that hybrid drums percussion thing, and I was on a David Byrne, Luwakabop, his label, with a guy named Jim White. I like this guy a lot. It was crazy music, and I was able to put like that small Chinese opera gong on the snare and hit that, and the shaker in one hand, and like through the late 90s, I was doing a lot of that, and I like to come back to it, that kind of thing. I like that, but I think maybe more and more, I just feel comfortable with playing straight, if that's what the tune is. Like, I will listen to songs I did a long time ago and go like, wow, what was I thinking? But maybe that's just part of the growing process.
Sure.
And with Jim White, another thing, one of his songs that I played on was on the TV show Breaking Bad. And so I said to him, this is really great, it's on it. And if you heard this thing called new use checks, it's like if you do a song in a record, then you do something else, and it gets placed in a TV show or movie or something, like through the union, not through your pockets, but through the union or something, you'll get paid like a fee for it, like another session. I thought, fine, I can help him out too, like if he doesn't know about it. But he wrote back, and he was so goddamn livid. He said, if you wanted more money, you should. I hope I'm not talking shit right now. I'm just being really honest.
Yeah, that's fine.
As of like two people hanging out. He said, if you wanted more money, you should have told me this 10 years ago or whatever.
Well, I think also like just the fact that you're asking him a neutral question and he interprets it as you coming after him just goes to show that the business is a little bit dangerous and people are on their guard. They're assuming the worst.
Yeah, and it's a crazy like role reversal. It's like I was helping him with his thing. It's like the wackiest thing. But I really think that it's important to manage just to know what you're at. Now, with the Katie Lang Band, it changed 3 times.
When did you start playing with her?
This was in 2003. But what I want to say, like the third band, which is the youngest, everybody was so on top of it, with the money, who's doing what, should we talk to the management about this, because we did a gig and it looks like they were filming it, and they were so on it. Now the first band were like older people, and I respect them a lot, and they weren't into that as much. It's kind of interesting. I think maybe nowadays, that people are more savvy, intelligent, or aware, of.
Is it just as easy now for you to have your mind blown by a new sound that
definitely.
You haven't heard?
Yeah, sound.
When was the last time that happened? Has anything recently totally surprised you?
Like Jojo Mayer, that I'm not a fan of that kind of playing, but I like when he plays with the brushes and he kind of has his own groove, and it's really mystifying.
You're not a fan of that type of playing. You mean super technical?
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
But I like to listen to it. I like to hear like what's going on.
Do you have specific goals in mind when you're practicing? Like, do you have a destination that you want your playing to head towards?
Yeah, sometimes when I'm doing like my homework, like studying for like songs I'm going to be recording, I'll actually, that's a lot of like writing. Like I'll think of different ideas and write them down. But I'll hear something on a record and I'll really try to get it down, but then do my spin on it. I think that's really important. So you have the spirit of who you heard it from, but it's your thing. I like that. Like with, I'm still a big fan of Jim Gordon. I love his work with all the way back, like with Everly Brothers through that Layla album. Then I'll hear like a certain beat that he does, or like a funny fill where it's eighth notes, but like each eighth note is like at an odd order of the drum, or that thing where he opens up the hi-hats like in a different numbers, and but I'll get into that, but then I'll try to put my own spin onto it, so it's more like something I would do, and I think it's good, almost like a respect kind of thing. But then there's times when I will do something as a quote, because I'd like people to go like, oh, so that's what he's doing. Like there's on the Fiona Apple record, there's one tune called Slow Like Honey, where on the verse I do quarter notes on the hi-hat, but like gradually open up the hi-hat with my foot. And I feel like Mitch Mitchell did that on If 6 Was 9, maybe a little more predominant, but I dig that too, to quote somebody and it gives you like this really good glowing feeling, like yeah, I'm a fan.
You came near to me, and you endeared to me, but you couldn't quite discern me.
Have Have you ever heard anybody quoting you?
No, I've heard people say, one time in a session, someone told me that a drummer said, "Wow, what would Danny Frankel do?"
Who have you spent the most time playing with of any of the artists that you've worked with?
Well, it went for a long time with Katie Lang from 2003 to 2010.
How did that come about? How did she become aware of you?
I was playing at this a restaurant in Laurel Canyon called Pache. It used to be the original Cat and the Fiddle. It's there on Laurel and Kirkwood. And the bass player, who I met through Jim White, his name is David Pilch, and so he told me about that she was auditioning people. And I heard that Joe LaBarbera auditioned. Mm-hmm. So when he's like a super great drummer. And when I heard he auditioned, it made me feel so relaxed. I mean, it made me feel like, oh, this is great. I know he's going to take it, so I should still get it. So I should still go there anyway, just kind of play naturally, And she ended up liking that. So yeah, I didn't bring any of the bells and whistles with it. Just like this bebop kit, I call it, like snare drum, bass drum, cymbal, and hi-hat, and just played. And each time we'd play like a different take of the same song, I'd play like slightly different, and I think she liked that also. She once said she likes when people kind of play like a little bit differently each time.
What are some of the lessons you learned from playing with her?
Her ear was so great. One time at sound check, we did a song, and then she turned back, she goes, "Is that the same shaker you always use?" And it was a different shaker, and she knew that, and or one time she goes, "It sounds like there's some hardware banging around." That had something to do with like a hi-hat that was loose on the pedal. But with her, to listen even more and to really get into the ensemble-ness, of a band.
What was it like to be in a band with her for a long time as a person? I mean, did you hang out, or was it strictly professional?
No, we would. She would do the thing where she could fly and we'd be on the bus, but we would hang out. Like one time in Sydney, Australia, I was walking through that great park there, and she was walking too, and she said, "Hey, I'm going to this great dim sum restaurant. You want to go there?" So I said, "Fine." So we went there, hung out for like a few hours. She was like one of the people in the band. It was really cool. Really fun, great. Oh, and also the catering was excellent. She was a vegan. The food for her that was for everyone. It was just really great, like great fruit and vegetables. Yeah.
Do you work out when you go on the road?
Yeah, there's always a swimming pool or a gym, and yeah, I totally love that. I love walking around, and I think us drummers are like that. I think we're different than the other people in the band. I noticed that like a lot of the drummers kind of like stay alone too, because I've been a percussion guy when there's a drummer, And I'll notice that about them too, and I'm a little more social. I'm kind of a nut in a way. I will go alone because I kind of like getting into your own groove, but I notice that drummers will do that. But yeah, I will work out. I think it's great. I like doing yoga, and yeah, so far I don't have any issues or anything like that. I know that it's because of being yoga and exercising, and
I mean, it was a revelation to me when I started exercising when I was on tour. Like, probably once I got into my 30s, that's when I started doing it. And it just makes the whole thing so much more fun.
Oh, definitely, yeah. What would you do?
I would go to the gym and lift weights and run and go swimming, stuff like that.
Great stuff. There's a time when I think it was a super stress thing that happened, and at the same time, I think from all these years of drumming, and this is what Keltner calls it, the forward head things, like drummers, like we were kind of like leaning over the hi-hat, and you have that like geeky look with the head like that. After all those years, something happened, like, and my toes are tingling, and I talked to other drummers, they said they've had it too, like older drummers, and then so I did this physical therapy. I do it, the lessons they showed me, like every day with the resistance band, with the stretching against the door jamb of a door. It's good stuff. I don't have any of that stuff anymore. And one time we were playing in Long Island, and a friend of one of the roadies was a body worker guy, and he said he would check me out during the show and to see what my posture was like. I think that's pretty important stuff, you know.
Is there anything coming up that you want to talk about? Any projects coming up?
Oh, that one gig I invited you to at the Blue Whale, where we're doing Electric Miles, the Miles Davis period from 69 to 74. There might be a chance that we're going to play in Japan. That'd be great, at the Blue Note. And I probably just jinxed it. Oh, that's okay.
All right, well, that's a good
whatever.
place to end it then.
Hell yeah, thank you.
Danny Frankel, thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. It was really great.
That was great. Thanks.
You got it. Yes.
The Trap Set is produced by me, Joe Wong, along with Chris Karwowski, who also edits the program. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at The Trap Set, and visit our website, thetrapset.net, to subscribe to our show for free. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please donate to our show. If you can't afford to donate, please tell a friend and give us a good rating on iTunes. Send your feedback and guest requests to thetrapset@gmail.com.